Hello again. This is James Hig Adams with Words Bold. I'm back to read from you, to read for you something I call Poverty, and Poverty Part 1. Normally I like to keep my poems and my ideas brief, but then I found that there are times when certain topics or subjects kind of take a life of their own and end up being something that I can't keep brief. And with this poverty, I ended up breaking it down to two parts, and it was maybe 6, 7 pages long. And please be with me as I read part 1 for you. What is poverty? That is only the critical question that many people ask as they wear the mask of peasantry and the so-called middle class. Poverty is a short or extremely long tunnel. One doesn't know where the light or the end may be, but we must keep on running. Poverty is having a job, but being in a rut. A rut is defined as a routine situation of having to borrow against future wages before they are even calculated or pocketed. Poverty is the weight, the crush of having to plead for a personal payday loan even when one can't afford to borrow. We live in a time when poverty has caused so much havoc that the experts have had to dust off new categories or simply close their eyes. They have new categories or subcategories to explain away poverty. Some of those categories are plain and Jane poor, the working poor, almost too poor, will be poor very soon or one day, too poor to qualify for public assistance, the poor, and the poorest amongst the poor. What is poverty? Other than for reasons of spiritual sacrifice, devotion, and development, I know of no man, I know of no woman, or no child that has made poverty their lifelong goal or ambition. I have not crossed paths with any person or a man that dreams the permanent reality of past being the poorest man in his community. I have yet to serve a woman who wakes in the morning, leaves home day after day, week by week, with the intentions of returning home just as poor or poor as she was the day or years before. Poverty is like a lion, as it is the queen, the king, the princess, and the prince. For my listeners who were born the generation before me, poverty is that evil that we must still overcome. And for my chess-playing listeners, poverty is compared to the rook, the bishop and knight of one's existence, as it controls the access to subsistence. For my hip-hop listeners, poverty is compared to a big boss, as it seeks to control the wages before taxes, after taxes, benefits, and take-home pay of those who are poor. Poverty does not voluntarily leave or give in to resistance. It is a formidable opponent and enemy. It will volunteer to destroy and disrupt families, but it won't leave voluntarily. Why? The weak pawns of this world seek to have power and control over whether the impoverished will eat or not. But there is real hope against this enemy called poverty. I don't mean the unsecure hope of political, religious rhetoric, pyramid schemes, or out-of-date wars. Poverty is compared to a nest of flesh-eating ants as they silently but blatantly nibble and tear apart the structure that is the foundation of the world's citizens. Poverty is a few words that I am too dignified to utter, words that would require permissive advisory on the CD cover. Poverty is that which runs 2, 3 generations deep, if not more. Poverty is not being able to buy everything that you need from the store. I emphasize that bold word, need. Some would say that poverty is a numbers game, talking about percents, fractions, and so forth. I would remind anybody with that mindset, that's a downright shame. Regardless of the statistics, the endless research and studies, poverty is real. It is real people, real lives, real warm blood, hands outstretched in the begging position, dirty faces that have avoided cotton wash rags, teeth ruined from lack of treatment. Poverty is real, real people. Poverty is human beings dying from preventable diseases. Numbers can always be twisted to fit one's intent to present an imperfect or perfect picture. Let us go over this again, class. Poverty is real, real people. Poverty is little boys and little girls roaming the streets in search of milk, bread, and meat. What is poverty? Poverty is big boys and girls leaving the school in the hallways of higher learning with more in debt than they'll earn the first 5 years of their working lives, if they are fortunate enough to discover employment. I've asked the question to no one in particular: is it moral for a young mind to start adulthood with their backpack loaded with debt? Now I ask this question of those that claim to have the marketplace cornered on morality, compassion, those that have given the world the perception that they've cornered righteousness and morality as their own. What is poverty? Poverty is looking at your children or your grandchildren and having to answer them no, 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 and sorry, baby, grandma can't afford that. Not even for their most basic needs and desires. Desires and needs that were once considered basic for every child. This concludes Poverty Part 1. Now in Poverty Part 2, we get more into the spiritual part of this thing. And thus far, we've only talked about the material that one needs to maintain themselves from poverty. And we can't leave it at that without talking about the spiritual part of what one needs. Thank you for listening.